You know that some of your clients want recliners, right? And you're thinking, please, please don't make me put that in that room. Well, Kravit just gave you a gift. Their new line, Kravit Motion, is all about comfort without the clunky eyesore. We're talking sleek silhouettes, tailored arms and backs, gorgeous details, and yes, it reclines, but in a way that actually works with your interior design plan. So whether it's manual, plug-in, battery-powered, it's all high-end, all low maintenance, and you can customize it with curated fabrics and finish options that fit your design vision. So if you've been avoiding motion furniture, it's time to take another look. Head over to Kravit.com and check out Kravit Motion, because form and function finally just called a truce. Welcome to A Well-Designed Business. My name is Luann Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Before we get into today's episode, I want to let you know that we're doing something a little different over the next several months. We're bringing back the most downloaded, the most talked about episodes from the last 9 years of A Well-Designed Business. These are the episodes that built businesses, that sparked aha moments, that turned you into an action taker. Now, if you're wondering why we're revisiting these episodes and what's changing with the show overall, well, I walk you through the full vision in our April 25th, 2025 episode titled The Big Shift, What's Changing on a Well-Designed Business and Why. That episode is linked for you in the show notes. Now, a quick heads up. These episodes are airing as they originally did. That means the music might sound familiar or it might be vintage. That means the event dates will definitely be out of date that I talk about. And it also means that any offers that are mentioned may or may not be valid still. But the insights, still golden. So whether it's your first time hearing this episode or your fifth time hearing it, there's something in this conversation for you right now in this season of your business. So here's the show. I hope you enjoy it. Hi, welcome to another episode of A Well-Designed Business. Sarah Magness joined me today, and I, for one, am very glad she did, because in addition to Sarah being a House Beautiful Next Wave designer and her being featured in Architectural Digest for a massive townhouse project that she saved and renovated, Sarah and I get into a conversation today about how to talk budgets with clients, and I think you're going to love her straightforward answers and her advice for this tricky area of business. Her firm, Magness Design, which is located in New York City, focuses on preservation by saving historic properties and making them livable, and she has major projects in New York City, the Hudson Valley area, and on Long Island. In addition to telling us how she gained real-life design experience before opening her own firm, she also tells us about the New Heights program at Marymount, where she teaches middle school girls the principles of design and architecture. Sarah came to spearhead this program through her involvement in the Institute of Classical Architecture and Art. In the last 4 years, the program has been so successful that it's now spreading nationally. There's a lot to learn in this episode, so be sure to let me know either in the Instagram post for this episode or the Facebook post for this episode what your favorite takeaway is. On Instagram, follow me at Luann Nigara, and on Facebook at A Well-Designed Business. And be sure to follow our sponsor Article.com on social too. As a matter of fact, after you check out their fabulous line of mid-century Scandinavian-inspired furniture and you sign up for their trade program at welldesigned.article.com. That's welldesigned.article.com. Be sure to let them know on social that you found them through this podcast, and maybe give them a high five and thank them for helping me bring this podcast to you. Alrighty, let me introduce you to Sarah Magness. Hi, Sarah. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so Sarah, you have a very interesting body of work here. You seem to have been hatched as a baby designer 8 years ago right into the luxury market. So,
yes.
You seem to have bypassed that whole, I'm going to do every Tom, Dick, and Harry in my neighbor's, guest bedroom for free.
I did it a little. I'm not going to, I had small instances of that, but I was very fortunate to have the opportunities to have projects that really were very intensive, long, but also very exciting to work on.
Okay, so let's pick apart a little bit about how that came to be. So the thing is that coming from your background in both an architecture degree and a post degree in interior architecture, when you first started to work, you didn't necessarily go out on your own. You went to work from some firms in the beginning, if I understand it correctly. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And were they architecture firms strictly or interior design firms? How did the beginning go for you?
So when I was in my graduate program at Pratt, I had a really amazing thesis professor that gave me some amazing insight into initially having my own firm. And as most people know, that's sort of the best way in business to be profitable. So his suggestion was to work for 4 or 5 different firms of varying sizes. To get real life experience, to see what scale of a firm I may want to operate as one day, but also to see how they operate, their day-to-day, tasks of how they run their business, how they communicate with clients, and so forth. So that's exactly what I did, and I worked. I focused mainly on architects that had a similar background to me educational-wise. So almost all of them had backgrounds in architecture, but focused more on interior architecture for a profession.
Interesting. Okay, so I love this professor. I love this professor at Hello, right? Because that's so true, is to come out. I mean, we've had interior designers on the show that recommend spend a year working at retail, whether it's a furniture showroom or a kitchen design showroom or something, but also for this professor to suggest that you work at specifically 4 or 5 different size firms so that it's like doing reconnaissance. It's like, and truly what it is, Sarah, see if you agree, it's almost like the completion of the design education that the schools are not able to do because they can't keep you there for 8 years, right?
Yes, correct. And I mean, most students that have an architecture background, they have to go through an apprenticeship, I like to call it, where, they have to follow with national guidelines. They have to file with NCARB as far as just filling out, it's sort of a timesheet of all different, there's 16 categories of components that you have to accomplish and have signed off by your superior in order to take an architecture exam. And interior design doesn't necessarily have that type of program. So I was sort of trained initially to focus in that way and work with different architects and study under them so that I could eventually go out on my own.
So the thing is now that's interesting. Like obviously with architecture, you're describing you have to do this sort of apprenticeship, but in interior design, that's not a requirement. And so we've had interior designers that go out right from school onto their own. For crying out loud, we have interior designers that put a sign up and say, I'm an interior designer, right? But I love that. Again, I'm going to go back to his advice because I remember when I interviewed Dr. Ellen Fisher, who at the time was the dean of the New York School of Interior Design, I said to her, why don't you teach business? Why don't you teach interior designers, how to run the business? How can you leave such a gaping hole in the education? And she straightened me right out. She said to me, Luann, we have to teach commercial, residential, sustainable, floor plans, sourcing. Like she went through 90 things that you guys have to learn in an interior design course for your course. And she said, we just can't get to it. She said, however, we do always recommend that the students go and work for other firms before beginning their own firm, even if it is only for a couple of years, to try and learn that business component. And so this man's advice took it a step further. He said for 4 or 5 years. Okay. So I love it. And so what happens now? You have some pedigree. You didn't just go out and work for Sally Smith Interior Designs here, Sarah.
No. I was very selective on who I chose to work with because I admired their work and I wanted to, learn from the best. So when I first came out, I worked for a really big architecture firm called Corrigan, which was an international firm that, was great just to get exposure to see kind of big scale projects that I could be working on, but then decided to focus more on residential and began working with Deborah Burke, who I really admire and love. She's a great boss, great person. So she was very supportive of me. And then went and worked for Benjamin Noriega, who's also an amazing mentor to me, and also Christopher Maya, who is a true decorator, and introduced me to a world of the decorative arts that I would have never known without being sort of boots on the ground with him to visit all the different stores and vendors that exist in New York City, to be exposed to that. So very grateful to all of them.
That's a terrific, like I said, it's some pedigree there. And the question I have for you is, somebody listening who's getting ready in the next year or two to graduate from architecture school or interior design school or something, or even is out there now and a year or two in the industry, 3 years possibly, how do you get a position at so I understand how possibly getting the second, third, and fourth is easier after you have the resume with the others. But that first one, is there any magic trick there? Is it I was, straight A's in my class, or I just was persistent, or I actually had a friend of a friend? What happens with that?
Well, in the residential world, it's not as intimidating, I would say, to interview for a prospect job. I mean, in the architecture world, interviewing for big companies, I mean, most universities have career day. I know, for instance, at Notre Dame, University of Texas, Yale, New York School of Interior Design, RISD have amazing career days where a lot of very high-end residential interior design and architecture firms participate. So I strongly suggest that, you make your appointments to meet with the firms. You should study the list of firms that are participating before they arrive, because it's being my own business owner now. It's very nice to interview a future prospect employee that actually knows my work.
Right.
Or, understands the way I work or what my interests are as far as my work. So, I don't necessarily think it's very hard to get your foot in the door, but you have to do the due diligence of, studying different firms that you might be interested in, and really just picking up the phone or emailing them could really go far. to help
Okay.
you get in.
So the big advice there is if you are in school and have the opportunity to do the career day, don't, pass that off that day and, go to yoga class, right? Get to the career
Exactly.
day, number one. But
Yeah.
but the thing is, what I hear what you're saying too is, and they say, this is the advice for every person interviewing for a position is to get to know the company and the firm. But the idea is that for you appreciate now on the other side, really having more than just a passing understanding of that firm's aesthetic, what their culture is, what their design, imprint is, and so forth like that. Is that right?
Yes, very. And residential design is so personal, more so than I think any other facet of interior design. So you need to have a connection with the employees that you have.
How many these other firms? So the first firm, Corrigan, is big firm. Deborah
Yes.
Burke, how big is her firm?
Deborah Burke's about probably 35 employees now.
Whoa, okay, that's a big firm. And how about Benjamin's firm?
Benjamin's about 8.
Okay, yeah, I thought his was smaller. And Christopher?
Christopher's 3. He's
Okay,
tiny.
so
Yeah.
much harder to get in to be picked at Christopher. And Benjamin,
Yes.
probably.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Not that Deborah is a walk in the park. I'm sure she has high standards and so forth. But when you have 35 employees and probably a dozen or so are a combination of juniors and senior designers, there's a little more wiggle room there. But these other guys are probably really only narrowing it down. Did you spend a year, 2 years at each of these places? What did that look like?
I spent a minimum of a year and a half at each place. So Deborah, I worked for her a year and a half. Christopher, I was with him 3 years, and Benjamin, I was with him for 3.
Now, this is a funny question that occurs to me. Is it weird to leave a firm like Deborah's or Benjamin's or Christopher's in that especially 1.5 year period? Is it, or are these individuals that know that they are bringing in new, younger talent and they're going to, move them through their system and constantly do that? Like, is there a culture? Because I know I've talked to Andrew Sawalski. He was episode 28. He worked for Benjamin Noriega, and he just raved about this man as a mentor. And what I particularly remember about the conversation that Andrew had when he mentioned Benjamin, he said that he personally was starting to feel a little bit like maybe it was time to go on his own. And when he went to broach the subject with Benjamin, Benjamin just looked at him and said, "Why are you still here? It's time to go." He said, "Go fly. You're ready." And so what is that like? Is it Deborah Burke's firm the same, or hers she hopes or thinks? I know you don't know, you can't answer for her, but you know what I'm talking about, the culture.
Yeah, no, the culture is for bigger firms, yeah, there is a turnover rate in that way because there's many people like me, especially if they come from an architecture background where they're learning from the best. And being in New York, you're surrounded by a huge pool of talent. So you're also being sought after by other firms. So it's definitely part of the culture. It's understood for the larger ones. The smaller ones, it's, again, much more intimate, and your relationship with your superiors and your bosses, you create more lasting friendships, with and connections with the people that you work with. So with Benjamin, it was a very similar story as Andrew's in that the first day I walked in the door, Benjamin said to me, "Sarah, if you work for me longer than 3 years, I taught you nothing."
See?
And, that sort of took me by surprise.
Yes, right?
But I remember when 3 years came up, I sat down with him again, same as Andrew did, and I said, I have this possibility of a project, but I don't want to take it, if you don't think, and it was more of a dialogue of really just saying, do you think I'm prepared and ready to do this?
Right.
And what was very supportive about Benjamin, and to this day, because I see him on a regular basis, is that he said, "Sarah, you're ready." But he's like, if it doesn't work out, you can come back. So, I didn't have the fear of, you have your normal fears of just, starting something new, but like
Exactly.
it wasn't like I was jumping off a cliff and hoping to land on my feet. It was just, there was a lot of support in the design community, and especially being in New York as long as I have now. It's really an amazing community of people in New York that support everyone.
That's can you think about that now, Sarah? How do you feel about that now that you've been running and building your own firm? Do you, because that is what I'm hearing. I have not met Benjamin Noriega yet, and hopefully one day I will. But he sounds like his particular mission, in addition to creating beautiful spaces for his clients, but that he has this dual mission of mentoring, teaching, and kicking out of the nest young, inspired talent. And so that's a different mission than somebody who could be everything equal, as same level of notoriety, same level of talent, same level of years in business, but wanting to keep their team with them for 10 and 15 and 20 years. Two different points of view, right? Where do you fall?
For me, based on just where I am in my business right now, it's definitely, if the right person came, for that type of partnership, I would definitely embrace it. But I'm just not at that scale yet. And my clients are much more hands-on. They want to, especially in residential, they want to spend time with me. So, it's sort of a balance, and it's a constant dialogue amongst my peers, and particularly in architecture, because it's much more common to have partnerships in architecture than it is in interior design. So it is a constant dialogue.
Yeah, no, I have to say, I think that's an interesting, like I said, the second time, if there's two of you that I've met, then there's probably 3 dozen others that Benjamin has brought in, mentored, and said that same sentence to. If you're here in 3 years, then I haven't taught you anything, which, and being a business owner for almost 4 decades, I'm very interested in mentoring and teaching too, but I love it when they stay and grow up and then become, my equal sitting next to me, doing it as well as I do, and so many things better than I do. And so I don't think one is right or wrong, but there is a different mindset as the business owner of what your mission is when you meet your next new employee. And so I think that's very interesting and gracious of him to always have the thought to teach you as much as he can teach you and then send you on your way.
Exactly.
So, but here's what happens when you get sent on your way from, as I said, firms like this, then you are not with your first projects where you are scrambling and trying to argue price and how many hours it's going to take. You actually launch your firm at this luxury level. You just take everything you've learned from these 4 or 5 firms. And of course, it's almost 10 years that you spend doing this.
Yes,
so
yes,
right. You're not brand new when you leave and start your own firm. So I love that too. What happens, Sarah, when you do, so you have the chops, you come out, you have this 8 or 10 years plus your 2 degrees, you have, as he said, that you're ready. He said you can do it, and if it doesn't work out, come on back. But we understand that you have the technical capabilities, and probably you've learned the business side of it as well from this experience. But do you still have to have you still have a conversation about budget? I mean, that's has to happen on every project, but the conversation is just about if it's a $1 million budget or a $2 million budget. I mean, talk to us a little bit about that.
Yes. So I always say in residential, because most of my projects are between 3 to 5 years duration. So they're very long because we're doing all facets of design. So we're doing architecture, sometimes we're doing landscaping, and we're doing interior design and decorating. And sometimes, lifestyle. So it can be, all encompassing and, take a very long time. But as far as budget goes, every client is different. It's like meeting a new friend, and their personalities are, their own. And, you, as a business owner, you adapt and understand their nuances and who they are. And budget is always one of the first topics of discussion. And the way I approach it is to really, sit down, talk through more from an architectural background, the phases of design. And because a lot of times clients don't understand the vocabulary, the definitions of certain terminology within the design world. When you talk about design development, schematic design, construction documents,
Right.
bidding, all of those things. So I kind of really break it down for them in my initial proposal to them, that includes, my fees and whatnot, so that they understand somewhat of the vocabulary of design, so that they don't feel as intimidated by the budget. And I try, based on their scope, to give a estimated amount of timeline for how long certain aspects will take. It's not a guarantee, of course, because people change their minds.
Right.
And you may be like, well, I don't really like that anymore. Let's think about this. So that's part of the process as well. But I really try to keep a very open dialogue, but also to educate my clients just about the process of design. It's you kind of, if you think about it, if you're going in for surgery, for a procedure, you want your surgeon to explain the whole process to you. Exactly. So that even though you're asleep during the whole thing, you want to know right. that, you can go in saying, okay, I know this is going to happen and I'm going to come out and I may have this feeling, I may not, but, at least you're prepared. And I kind of approach it the same way.
I love clients. That. I've used that same example on the show before. I love that example. And I think that is one of the places that a designer makes a misstep, and sometimes when they're lesser experienced, is knowing that what is going to happen, that you are going to have a design development segment, you're going to have the schematic design segment, you're going to have the drawings, and then you're going to put things out to bid. You know it, but we don't know it. We as the consumer don't necessarily understand each detail and what goes into that section of the project, what goes into that section of the entire plan. And I know that when you get to the level as a designer where you can confidently describe that to me without talking in circles and without losing me in the conversation, then I already start to transfer my trust to you. Because I feel and hear that you know exactly where this is going. And then secondly, not only do I start to transfer my trust to you, but I start to value you and start to think, oh, you're probably going to cost some money, but that's okay because you sound like you know what you're talking about, right? So I start to get over little hurdles. And then, of course, we do have to get to what exactly is it, projected to cost and so forth like that. And so were you in your time that you spent with these other firms, you must have been able to be privy to these presentations where the topic of budget comes up, so that you gathered confidence in the flow of discussing it.
Oh yes, definitely.
Right.
I mean, particularly with Benjamin, because it was always, you're there from the get-go, usually from the first initial meeting to the end.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So here's what happens when you are a newer designer and you don't have pedigree like this, and you don't have the luxury and the ability to have worked with firms that are really, as you said, top of the game and executing it, as a system each time. This is part of the thing. Well, how much do you think this will cost? Well, I don't know how much it'll cost. It could be between $100,000 and $200,000 for this renovation. Well, a client is not going to sit with that. That's just too gray for them. So how do you, when you're your projects are much, much more expensive than that. How would you suggest and advise a designer that is not looking at, say, simply a room, but maybe a home, and maybe it is not architecture, but it is the design plan. Maybe so the home is being built, you're working in unison with the architecture and the builder, and then your part as the designer. And the homeowner looks at you and says, okay, this is a 6,000 square foot home. What's my design budget going to be? What do you suggest? How do you suggest that get handled?
So first off, what I would suggest is ask what the construction budget is.
Okay.
because it gives you a precedent of their level of quality.
Okay.
For whatever if it's, a pool house or a house, whatever it may be, if you're saying a 6,000 square foot house, then if you understand the budget for construction, and it's going to vary obviously on region, but the price per square foot is a good way to sort of start engage what the client's level of quality is.
Okay.
And from that, in my experience, the interiors budget ranges between 15 to 18% of the construction total
Okay.
of what you would spend on furniture.
Okay.
And again, that's also, there's going to be in my business particularly, there's clients that they want things that no one else has. They
Right.
want bespoke pieces that are designed specifically for them. And they understand that comes at a huge premium, but they want to pay for that.
Right.
And that's different,
So
based on the
yours might
general
be
rule of
25
thumb.
or 35% of the
Right,
construction budget, or
right.
even possibly higher.
Yeah, but that's a very good way to gauge, just if you're asked on the spot
I love that.
to be like, okay, what's your price per square foot? Okay, now I can estimate that, 15-20% gauge of what
That's
the
a
interiors would
very
be.
actionable tip. Thank you, Sarah. I have to say, I love that, because for somebody that is first time experiencing that, that gives them, because what happens typically when you're first time experiencing that, you're doing this whole dance of, well, I'm not sure, and how do I know if you're going to pick quartz or marble, if you're going to pick, this or that. And what happens is that is all absolutely true. The designer does not know what they're going to do, but I love that you have this very specific way to estimate it. And the simple fact is that it does what I said a moment ago. When you come back with a direct answer from a question, it instills confidence and portrays your value. It's like, she knows what she's talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I love it.
And
Thank you.
I also feel that clients, budget, as we're talking about it, it's always a huge issue with every client. They may say they have a large budget, but then, everyone cares about their dollars and cents. So
Right.
in the end, what's important is that they have one number in their head. They add up everybody.
Yes.
And they say, I'm going to spend X.
Right.
And you, as the interior designer, have to realize that you're just one of the line items within that big number. And, I feel that clients, when you articulate to them that you understand their one number balance, and that you are a part of that, and to break it down almost like a grocery list of what needs to be done for the house, they're much more receptive to accepting things that may cost a little bit more, but it will enhance the house and also the client specifically to who they are. So I think it's important to kind of really look at it from the full picture of the process of design and who else is involved to get it done.
So what you're describing, if I'm hearing it correctly, is ultimately understand what their one number is. So they might just start out with, what is my budget for, what do you think my budget should be for interior design? You come back and you say, well, what's your budget for the overall construction? You calculate 20% of that, throw it at them. If they give you big eyes, right? Then you might say, well, what was your one number? What was the number that you expected to spend on the entire thing? And if it's a minute and a half above their construction budget, then you can easily tell them they're out of their mind. Like, how can I furnish a 6,000 square foot house? We have to be realistic, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, it's the art of negotiating. So, no one's going to want to tell you, well, I want to build this house for 3 million. It's
Right.
like, it's really
They'll
a
say
$5 million dollar. Yeah. So, it's a conversation of understanding that as well. But it's like, look, you like, and in residential, you can have these conversations. It's like, you want really nice things. You appreciate these finer things. And to do that, this is the time that's going to take to get those things, and this is what they're going to cost.
Right.
And in my experience, I have real life examples of projects, based on square footage costs of what things are. And they can see photographs of the quality of work and walking it through them. And, most of the time they'll get that. I have a project now where the client came in really under budget and we've tripled it. So,
Yes.
because they want nice things.
Right.
And, it happens. Almost every project I have, the budget goes up because they enjoy the process of design and they want to make their home, specifically if it's their primary home, very special.
The difference between going over budget because the client is making choices along the way is very different than going over budget because you have not respected the budget, right? So what you're saying is that they have their one number. You pitch them the 15 or 20%. It's either agreed or they're going to negotiate back and forth. But two things are happening. If you tell them it's approximately 20% and they say that pushes over the overall budget, then the discussion is, well, based on the portfolio that you've seen of mine, this is what I expect. It's not going to look like this. I don't think this is realistic. Where can we move? What can you do? And of course, they'll probably reach for it. But then when you have this budget in mind, as you go through the process, Sarah, if something that they describe to you is something they want, and that's going to start to push the budget, and now they've pushed the budget in one day and they push the budget. Correct me. Are you saying to them, listen to me, I love these things that we're doing. I love these things that we're creating together, but this is going to continue. We keep pushing the budget. Are you good with it? You keep getting the agreement, right?
Oh, yeah. I don't buy one single thing until I get the deposit for it.
No, but that's different that's different than apprising them that we budgeted $150,000 for this kitchen and this is going to put it over $10,000. Like, in other words, just having the deposit is different than advising them when they've pushed the budget. You do both, correct?
No, yeah, because I was through my bookkeeper and accounting. They're updated with a preliminary budget to start, and we'll have placeholders for items that we necessarily maybe haven't selected.
Right.
But they have a pretty solid full budget of every single item that is going to be purchased for the house initially.
Right.
So they can see, again, back to that grocery list of ideas, like, okay, I have to buy, 50 lamps and, 100 throw pillows. And it's, when you really knock it down where it's itemized that way, they see the amount of quantity that's needed for their house. And then it becomes a discussion, well, okay, the guest room, I don't need to buy a higher end quality furniture for that. I can buy that maybe from a catalog. And, that dialogue begins for things that maybe aren't as special to them or as important to help, monitor the price of the budget. But it's they're very much a part of the process on everything that's being purchased for them. Right. They know.
Right. For me, it's so funny because designers are constantly having the conversation using the words transparency. I want to run my firm transparent. And when they say that, they typically mean I want to give all of my net profit on cost of goods that I purchase to my client. And what my thing is transfer that transparency to the conversation of you've decided on a $50,000 budget for the master bedroom. And when the bed they select pushes it to $65,000, don't just put the invoice in front of them and say, oh, if they paid it, I guess they get it. It's put the invoice in front of them and say, this pushes the budget over 15 grand. Do you want this bed or do you want me to select another one? That's the transparency that I would like to encourage, you know? And I think obviously with an experienced seasoned designer, that's not a problem. But what I'm learning and finding through the coaching that I do is that a lesser experienced designer has a problem saying that. And I'm always trying to get across why. On the beginning, it's a choice. On the end, it feels like a put upon, right?
Yeah, no, totally.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's for younger designers. They're, I mean, money is not something that's necessarily very easily discussed within the interior design
Right,
world. You know,
right,
we're more artists than we are
right,
business people.
right,
So I don't know if it's the intimidation of losing a project,
right.
and upsetting a client, because especially in residential, you are very close to the
Mm-hmm.
client, but you have to sort of step back and look at it from, they selected this, because of their aesthetic, not because you selected it saying, I want to push something that's more expensive. Uh, unless it's something that's like, this is going to make a huge difference to the space if we choose this and explain why.
Right.
Um, but yeah, you can't be timid in that way.
No, because it doesn't. The thing is, if you're to use your word timid, if you're timid
Hmm.
about the conversation, you're timid about
Hmm.
if they're going to be upset, if you're timid about any of that, I promise you, they're going to be all of those things if it's a surprise after the fact.
Yeah.
The choice beforehand is simply a choice. As you said,
Yeah.
it's like this bed, I believe, will look good in this room because of these reasons. These are the reasons
Hmm.
I love this bed for this room.
Hmm.
However, here's an alternate, or here's the bed, but
Hmm.
we're going over budget. And I always
Hmm.
just am trying to express that conversation beforehand is not a dramatic conversation. It's, do you want mayonnaise or mustard? That's what that
Hmm.
conversation is. Afterhand, it's tough. Now, I have one other question because I know I'm going to get an email if I don't ask you this.
Hmm.
When you described 15 to 20% as the range for the interior design of the home, is that cost of goods? Is that include your design fees? Is that a complete estimate of the project?
No,
Okay.
no, no.
See, I knew
It's
I was going to
only,
get that
it's
question.
only, it's only goods.
That's cost of goods. Okay.
Hmm.
So, and so how do you, in that conversation, Sarah, then say, and I expect my design fees to be XYZ? Or is it not possible in that first budget conversation? How does that get handled?
So that's the more moving target number, at least in my business, because my projects are so long. Uh, the way that I operate is by the hour. So I charge like an architect.
Okay.
I don't charge like an interior designer. So I base the client, and you think like you're almost being charged like an attorney in a lot of
Right.
ways,
I love it.
So, as much time as you need me, that's how I'm billing you. And I do again, an estimated proposal of based on the scope at the time when we begin, of what I think it's going to cost. I'm pretty accurate at doing it now because I've done it a long time. Again, it ranges based on, some of it's based on the construction cost, but it's also the client. Each client is different. Some clients really want to be involved in the design process, so they want a lot of your time. Then I have other clients where they're building their fifth house and they've done it 100 times already, and they don't need to spend that much time with me. So it really varies on the client too, to know what their needs are.
So you have no problem, and I love it. So what you're
Hmm.
saying is if you've had 2 or 3 or 4 meetings with the client prior to signing the contract, and you can see that this is the client who is going to require more hours, you simply tell them, if you thought the project would take, I know that this is, you said
Hmm.
multiple years, but say it's going to take 80 hours a month, you'll look
Hmm.
and say, this one's probably going to be 100 hours a month. So you just
Hmm.
simply tell them 100 hours a month.
Hmm.
Yeah, right. I love it. I love it. And then the person who is, like you said, on their fifth house, and you know that they're just going to phone in their selections and have 2-minute emails with you, you can
Hmm.
say this is going to be it's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you give them do you do that? Do you say estimated hours per month on your project, or how do you
No,
explain that to them?
it's by phase.
Okay. Okay. Going back to
So
that
yeah,
development phase and the
hmm
schematic phase.
hmm
Okay.
So I try, because there's so much being thrown to a client. You have to realize, and I don't know if many interior designers really understand this, that a client is receiving, when they're building a house, tons of invoices,
Right.
tons and tons and tons of invoices. So your language needs to, you know, basically be similar to what language is being received from the general contractor, from the architect, from the landscape designer. If your invoices are similarly formatted to the way theirs are, it's going to be much easier, one, to get paid on time,
Love it.
and two, that they're not going to feel that you're a completely different entity than all the other components that are coming at them. So you just, I think it's just being, sympathetic to the fact that the client is they are the end all. So they're not just talking to you. They're talking to 4 or 5 other, contractors as well.
I love that analogy. No one has ever expressed that before on the program, where you're saying is if you really truly, this is of course we're talking about new builds, right? But
Oh
if you,
yeah, even renovations. Yeah.
renovation, right? Okay, right. A project
Yeah.
that includes construction, right? But I mean, the thing is that so even if we go back to the conditions of there's a separate architecture firm, building firm, and yourself, what you're saying is have a thorough understanding of what each of those firms are doing at phases and sort of align your work within those phases. Now, of course, we know that you are physically aligning your work with those phases. We know that as a professional, you know what you're doing in each of those phases, and you can't do this until that is done by another trade. But the point is that in the presentation, I hear that. That makes it so easy. So if I am the consumer and I've had my meeting with my architect and he said that in phase 1 will take 4 months, and these are the things I expect to happen. And the builder says in phase 1, these 3 things are what I'm going to do. And you come in, and then yes, you can go home, you can look at it and say, all right, all 3 of these people are going to need money from me at this point. They're all going to need money from me at this point, and it lines up and it makes sense. And it
Exactly.
lines you with the professionals, right?
Yes,
So now you're
yes.
not just the designer on the job that's getting sidelined and feeling shafted by the project. We had a conversation
Exactly.
one time. I think it was Christy Liu who described how she has such a great relationship with the architects and the builders that she works with, and that there really are the 3 legs of a stool as opposed to
very much.
right,
Yeah.
as opposed to being sidelined and marginalized by the other trades. And so I love that. That's such a see, what I like is the actionable way where you can visualize it in your mind during the period of your business where your confidence isn't quite there, right, Sarah? So before
right.
you actually have the confidence, it's so helpful to know the way and to know what you're striving for, because you say it once and it feels a little shaky. You say it the second time, it feels better. And by the third time, you're like, this is how it works. In the
Right.
phase 1, when your architect and builder are doing this, I'm going to be doing X, Y, Z.
Exactly.
Love it. I love it. Okay, awesome. Well, I appreciate your letting me pick apart budgets for a little bit, because I know that every designer listening could listen to a budget conversation every week, because it's such a hairy, topic, and everybody has a different idea and approach, and we usually can get one awesome nugget out of each of you. So thank you for that. What I want to do now is talk a little bit about some of your passion projects that you're in. You are very involved in the Institute of Classical Architecture and Art, and they have a campus here. They have an outreach with Marymount schools here in New York City, right?
Yes.
And they have a program called a program called New Heights, which you were involved in starting this program, is my understanding. Is that correct, Sarah?
Correct.
Okay, so tell us
yeah.
about it.
So the initial idea started a little over 4 years ago. Peter Leiden, who is the president of the ICAA, it was his idea to introduce architecture from a classical tradition to students. And specifically, he was thinking, first year high school, middle school students. And he developed a relationship with Marymount and Capucine, who is the headmistress there. And she was very excited about the program, specifically because Marymount is an all-girls school. And when Peter approached me with the idea, I was very excited, because I knew I wanted to study architecture when I was in 8th grade. So it was very sentimental to me. And I said, please please engage me in whatever, capacity you need me. And so I was really involved in the initial meetings to develop the curriculum. And it was great because we were focused more on their age, but also what we could do to introduce architecture to 13 and 14-year-old girls that live in New York City. And the program, this is our fourth year doing it. And what's so successful about it is that it's now in 5 other ICAA chapters nationwide.
Wow.
So it's really blossomed. And I have my first year students, they're seniors now, that have applied to architecture schools.
How many of those students are actually, because that's, one thing when you bring in a program like this to a school for an 8th grader, it's one thing to be, okay, this is good, interesting, but doesn't mean you're going to pursue it as a career. How many are you aware of are actually going into architecture as a career?
There's 4.
Wow.
4 from my first class. Yeah. There were, I think, 45 students our first year. So, it's just really exciting to me. And mainly it's just, being in New York City, you're surrounded by architecture, specifically classical architecture. And I really want, girls to walk the streets and understand what they're seeing. Right. And knowing the history that came through them, yeah. So
and have you had the opportunity to speak with these 4, or you're just aware that they've applied to schools that have architecture programs?
No, Capucine had sent me and Peter their emails. Their parents have reached out to Peter and myself and other teachers within the program, just how much they benefited from it. So it's yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to tell you what, I don't care if you want to be an architect or you want to be a lawyer or you want to be an office coordinator your whole life. The point is that when you know it at a young age, and 8th grade is awesome, but when you know it going into that secondary school, that college level experience, it just is so much nicer for the student to have it. And even if you switch your 2nd or 3rd year, it just gives you some focus. So tell us a little bit about what the girls are experiencing in that intensive week.
So yes, so the first year, again, it was over a 4.5-month period, just because it was the initial start and understanding the girls' normal school schedule of what was required. Was sort of set to that platform. But as the years progressed, the last 3 years, we've done it in a week intensive. And it's collaborated with their normal math and science, art classes that they have. And they also have free time within the Marymount curriculum for studying. So we, work alongside that as well. But what we give them, besides learning about the history and some of the math incorporated with architecture, we give them a project. And at the end of the week, they select what their project is going to be, and every year it changes. Most of the time, we give the option as well to create your own project based on what we've learned. And the majority of the students choose to design their own project. And then they present it in a science fair type format 2 weeks later.
Okay.
And for instance, one of the girls that they're in teams of 3, and one of the teams wanted to design their own project, and we were studying the Duomo in Florence. So they wanted to create a model out of plaster of the Duomo and how it was constructed. And what fascinates me so much about this program particularly is, one, how quickly the girls absorb the vocabulary of architecture, and that they can present a project to a jury of architects and interior designers and their fellow classmates of their project is astounding. But they're so well designed and articulated in their presentation. It's fascinating. So they're very engaged and very excited about it.
That's interesting. And so the Institute of Classical Architecture and Art, are they Are there chapters all across the U.S.? Are they international? Because I'm imagining somebody who might be connected with their middle school and think, I want this in our school. So the first thing would to be to reach out to the ICAA. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. The national chapter is in New York, but I think there are 12 nationwide chapters in every major city.
Okay.
So they could just Google the ICAA organization and find their local chapter.
And it's not international.
No.
Okay. So there's probably other entities that would be appropriate internationally. Okay. I mean, so fun. So they have this week intensive, all of this in education, the immersion into the language, the immersion into the different facets that go into architecture. They get assigned, well, they could choose or assign a project. 2 weeks later, they bring it back and they present it to everybody. I can imagine the beaming faces, right? I mean,
oh, yes. It's so fun. And, their parents come, the fellow classmates and the lower school, 6th, 7th grade come. It's really amazing.
And then you take a week out of your life, basically, to put your business and your life on hold in order to be a part of this classroom experience for a week. You probably have many hours that you're there during a day.
Yes. Right. But I enjoy it. It's what I love.
Yeah. And so you just account for it in your scheduling and in your project development.
Exactly.
Awesome. I love it. So exciting. What a great thing. Is it the type of thing, Sarah, where listeners in the New York City area could volunteer to be part of this, or it's a set thing? We don't call us. We don't need you.
No. Then because of educational requirements, I mean, the teachers that are selected, are part of the ICAA community.
Okay.
If people are intrigued by it and want to be a part of it, the best advice I would say is become a member of the ICAA and,
start there.
Express your interest.
Start there and then see if you have the credentials to possibly teach if you're interested. And if not, I'm sure there's 1,000 other ways to help and support the programs.
Exactly.
Awesome. Very good. Very good. Well, I really appreciate your joining us today, Sarah, and
thank you.
Walking us through. I have to say, before you go, I just do want to give a shout out to this documentary that you created, this 12-minute documentary called The Townhome. And it was a project here in Manhattan where, how many stories was this townhouse?
7.
7 floors that you gutted from top to bottom, and you really go through the process and show how it happened with yourself and you're the partner team of the builder and the architect, and it really is something else. Good for you on that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So you can see that on Sarah's website. Sarah, would you tell us your website, please?
Yes, it's magnessdesign.com.
So it's Magness design.com. And right there on the homepage, you will see the video there, and you can really see the, the magnitude of this renovation. This thing was, how many years old is the townhouse?
We completed it in 2015. So
but it was built when? How many?
We started in 2010.
No, I meant the townhouse itself, the original townhouse.
Oh, it was originally built in 1911.
Right. And what I liked listening to watching the documentary was how you gave thought to what would be in this home. You didn't just, hey, we're going to make it crazy pants, right? You honored the history and the architecture of it. I thought it was also interesting how in order to break it down, you have to shore it up so that the whole thing doesn't collapse.
Exactly.
It's a lot of details.
It is. It's a lot of moving parts, a lot of people. I think in one time there were, 50 people working inside the building. So
that's insane. I mean, that's beyond a typical renovation project. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, that's major.
Yes, but it's very. At what point did you have the idea when you took the project on from the beginning that you would create a documentary, or were you just documenting it and then you were saying to yourself, I have a whole thing of a body of video and work here for this? What happened?
It was interesting because the general contractor approached me with the idea. We wanted to do short clips of videos just to kind of document the process, because that was kind of the direction things were moving in. and continue to move in today
Mm,
through video content.
right.
But he really took it to the next level and brought in, I mean, we had a Hollywood cinematographer for the
Wow.
townhouse. So he's very famous. And it was a major, major, major production to
Yeah.
produce. But I'm glad we did it.
Yes, yes, it's really, really something to watch. So I encourage everybody to go over to Sarah's website, magnessdesign.com, and take a look at it. So, Sarah, thank you so much for joining me
Thank you.
today. Appreciate your
Thank,
time.
no, thank you very much.
How much did you love that budget conversation, right? I mean, so many little nuances there to help you navigate that conversation, like asking what their construction budget is and using a benchmark of 15 to 20% for a budget number. So good, because it is important for your client to wrap their brain around something, okay? We can't always just say, I don't know. I'm not sure. There has to be a number because the client can't make even a decision to go ahead and move ahead with you or not. And I know that you guys are always saying they have to tell you the budget, okay? But it is sort of a two-way street, okay? The other big strategy here is that ahead of time that you purposefully, intentionally sit down and make the master list of every item that could possibly go into a room. And then you do it for every room. This is one of those things that takes time to do, something that you have to time block in your week to do, probably over several weeks. But it's the kind of thing that once you do it, it's done, right? So Sarah said, take a living room. You have 2 lamps, $500, 1 sofa, $4,000, 2 chairs, $2,000, 1 area rug, $5,000, 1 coffee table, 2 end tables, 1 floor lamp, 6 throw pillows, right? 2 pairs of drapes with fabric and rods. You know, you see what she's doing here? She's adding all that up just at a basic level. And what happened? That's about $15,000 right there, and we haven't done any art or accessories. Okay, so what if you were to do this for yourself? Then when the client starts talking to you and says, well, what could it run? You could have an idea. And I would suggest that you do it for different levels. So if you are currently doing entry-level design, and you're obviously and possibly striving for mid-level design, right? Then you would do for your entry level and then the stretch level. And it's the same thing if you are mid-level striving for luxury design. You would do, a good, better, best. Or if you're at already the mid or high level, you do better and best. Okay? So whatever works for you, all right? So like if you're at entry level, it might be that the area rug in the item is $1,200 instead of $5,000, and maybe lamps are $100 instead of $250. But if you're luxury, maybe that area rug at better is $10,000, and at best it's $25,000. Okay, so the thing is, it really doesn't matter where you are or where you are heading as far as the level of your design. It matters that when you are asked, you can confidently express the range that it could potentially cost to design a particular room. All right? And the other thing is you could also create a mood board to go along with 1 or 2 of these room budgets so that when you're explaining it to a potential client, you could actually show it to them and say, with a living room like this, you can expect it to be $15,000 to $20,000, and then add art and accessories and yada, yada, yada. Or you could say, with a living room like this, you can expect it to be $35,000 or $50,000, and think about adding art and accessories that might add up, blah, blah, blah. All right? So it makes sense, right? I mean, I think it does. The bottom line is when you ask someone what their budget is and they don't answer or they say they don't know, the point is that you need real life strategies so that you can get some clarity between you and them on it. And that's what I like about this, because it really doesn't matter if your client has their budget figure in mind or if they have no idea what it is because they've never done this before. Either way, this gets you to an opening conversation that is based in something that you have put together intentionally, okay? And don't forget how valuable and how powerful a tool like My Doma Studio is for exactly this strategy, okay? You can create a library of your go-to resources right in your MyDoma Studio, which you then can use to create these particular budget mood boards. And then as you go through this, each room in this exercise, you can create the mood board to go with it. And then just imagine how powerful a presentation like this could be with your client. So you throw a number at somebody and say, well, this sort of living room is going to be $20,000. And they say to you, yeah, I only had about 10. And what if you had a $10,000 mood board put together for a living room? Now, I know you're all going, there's no such thing. But there is, right? There is. And it literally has a sofa, a chair, and a rug, and a lamp in it. But think about the power of that. If you literally had a mood board that had 5 items in it and you said, there's no TV here yet. Did you notice that? We need another $3,000 for the TV. So the reality is, and the point is that it makes it so it's just so plain and hard to argue with. And of course, I'm being a little facetious with this, but I'm actually not. I actually think it's a powerful tool because obviously the newer you are in business, the more you struggle with this conversation. But it is also a really great tool, even if you're at the top of the food chain, because the mood board for a $75,000 or $100,000 living room is going to be pretty darn spectacular. Wouldn't you agree? And the person that can afford that is going to want it. Absolutely. So that you can use MyDoma Studio for this. And the really cool thing is as you move things into the project, then the picture is there, the price is there, and that little approve button is there for your client, and that all goes down and gets totaled and gets into the cart, and then you get your dollar bills for doing it. So this is how you can use the MyDoma Studio, okay? What the thing about it is to always remember that Sarah Daniele, the CEO of MyDoma Studio, is an interior designer. This is, as they say, made by designers for designers, okay? So Sarah was an interior designer, a graduate of interior design school, and spent many years in the industry, and her specialty was renovations. So she has built this intuitively from the beginning, the way projects run, and of course, over these several years of building the platform and having many of you use it, lots of the innovations and changes to the platform come from your suggestions and requests. So, built by designers for designers, that's what it is. It's mydomastudio.com/well-designed business. Okay? All righty. What's your takeaway? What are you going to do? I really do like it when you share it with me in the posts on Instagram and Facebook. It's so much fun to get the conversation going there. So I appreciate it when you take the time to do that. I also definitely appreciate it when you take the time to go to iTunes and rate and review the show. So thank you, thank you, thank you if you have done that for me. And if you're on the fence, it'd be really swell if I could just tip you over and have you do that. All right, what's your thing that you're going to do? Maybe your thing today is you're going to leave me a review. Maybe that's your thing that you're going to decide to do. It could be, right? But also, I really do hope it's something that will help you run your business more profitably. All righty? Have an excellent day. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at luannigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.